Married couples who sleep in separate rooms. Why do you do this? We're both 41, been married 23 years, and sleep in different beds. First half of our marriage, we always slept in the same bed. Of course, there was the occasional crying kid who wanted mommy to sleep with them, or falling asleep on the couch or somewhere else. About 10 years ago, I spent a year working a midnight shift, so I started to sleep in our spare bed in the basement. We both realized we had much better sleep separate in our own beds. After I went back to a day shift, we went back to sleeping in the same bed and soon realized sleeping apart was more restful. Over time, we bought 2 full-size beds and put them in our bedroom, like the old TV shows. It's been great. Edit. So a lot of comments about intimacy. Yes, we have relations, I'd say every bit as much as we ever did in the past. We've been married over half our life, so we are really good at knowing when fun time is going to happen. Sometimes we sleep in the same bed. There's no rules we have to sleep separately all the time. Our beds are only about a foot apart, and sometimes we slide them together, especially when the kids were younger and they'd end up in our room, along with the dog. Edit 2. Yes, we got married at 18. We went to prom together, and girlfriend somehow got pregnant after prom when we stopped for soda. So we got married. I mean, it sounds like there's no problem with each other at all. No complaints of snoring or CPAP machines or nightmares or kicking and screaming. Sounds like you guys just needed a bigger bed. You know, plenty of space to be apart but still can touch fingertips. Story 2. When I was very young, my mother started sleeping on the couch every night. I remember asking her why, and she gave excuses like her back hurt in their bed and the couch was more comfy, or my dad's books were always scattered across her side of the bed and she didn't want to clean them up all the time. Dad was an avid reader. He had stacks of books as tall as the bed that were surrounding his half of the bed. This went on for a couple of decades. Mom never got a proper bed of her own, just invested in high-quality couches for our living room and chose to sleep there every night. Then one day, years after I'd grown and moved out of the house, my parents announced a divorce, which shocked me because I had never known any discontent between them. I asked my mother what happened, and she said that she fell out of love with my dad after my sister was born, but she didn't want the 2 of us kids growing up in a broken home, so they agreed to live together until we had moved out of the house. My parents were still the best of friends, just not lovers, so it was awkward for them to be sharing a bed together. My mother now lives on the opposite side of the country from the rest of us, on land she inherited from her mother. She built a cabin in the woods and is now happily living on her own. She has friends where she lives but claims she doesn't need a relationship anymore. That's pretty baller. I can respect that. The 2 parents committing to function as one home so the kids can grow up together. I think that's really cool when you can do that, provided it's in a healthy situation. I think a lot of people would say it's the parents' duty to do that, but growing up in a toxic home together is not better than 2 separate peaceful ones. Story 3. My grandparents, because of marital strain, weird and non-complementary work schedules, and my grandma's quickly reaching the point where it's hard for her to walk up the stairs to the master bedroom anyway. My last boss and his wife do this. They are very happily married. He just has severe leg issues that have him tossing and turning in bed a ton in an attempt to get less uncomfortable. And they quickly realized that if either of them wanted any degree of quality sleep, they'd need to have separate beds. Story 4. Not married on paper, we were both single parents who both lived alone for a long time before we began dating. We have different nighttime routines that neither of us were really willing to compromise on. Plus, we both have different ideas of how a bedroom should be set up aesthetically. I like my solitude and space and quiet, and I sleep better alone. Also should mention, my 10-year-old daughter is special needs and needs attention throughout the night, so I'm constantly up and down. She is on the main level of our house, and originally I was upstairs with him. I was getting up and crawling into bed with her in the middle of the night, every night. Eventually, I kind of lost my crap and broke up with my guy because I didn't feel able to balance her needs, my needs, and his needs. I couldn't move out, so I moved in to the guest room, right next door to my daughter, and I was really happy to create a space that was mine. We decided to work things out, but I stayed in my room and we visit each other in our respective spaces. Obviously, it's very unconventional, but it works great for our situation. Look, I'm not married, nor have I ever been married, but if there's one thing I've learned, it's that there's no one way to do things. You know, I think everybody has their own opinions, but as long as you're happy, loved, respected, and comfortable, hey, sounds like you guys are doing just fine. Story 5. Not married. Hope that's not a requirement. Boyfriend snores. No apnea. Tried the Breathe Right strips and they worked, but they gave him horrible bruises on his nose. It's not a fault of the product. His skin is very sensitive and he bruises easy. We start in the same bed and I end up in the other bed at some point of the night. He usually falls asleep before me, so he doesn't notice. He just remembers falling asleep in the same bed. If I do fall asleep first, I will usually wake up from the snoring and move to the other bed. I have to get up 2 hours before him for work anyway, so he also isn't disturbed by my alarm. I go and kiss him goodbye and it's fine. It actually works out fine. It's like when couples fall asleep intertwined and move apart through the night to their own side of the bed. Weekends we do sleep the whole night together because I'm usually too tired to be woken up from the snoring. And we have different preferences in the bed. He likes it soft and I like it firm. I'd rather sleep on the floor than a soft memory foam mattress. We will talk about things that bother us and check in every now and again with things like this. Communication is key. Story 6. We never used to. We always slept together side by side regardless of the fact that we had different shifts of work. She slept hard, not easy to wake, and I slept light. But whenever she'd get up for work, I wouldn't mind getting up with her. I would have slept enough hours to be good for the day anyway. I got up with her to kiss her bye and see her on her way to work, but then personal issues came up with me. Time went by. About 8 months, we fell out of love with each other. We tried to make it work, thinking it was just temporary. Well, fast forward about a year or so, and we started sleeping separately. We did it to start separating ourselves from each other emotionally, and so that it would be a lot easier to handle the separation and the emotions for when we knew that the divorce would be final. We started sleeping by ourselves to get used to how it would be after we split, and the process of the divorce went smoothly, and that was that. She found love again, I believe, and I'm here focusing on myself now. And it would not have been easy if we wouldn't have started sleeping in different beds. And the thing is, we didn't talk about sleeping separately. It just kind of happened, like subconsciously, almost as if we knew this is what needed to be done. Sorry about the many details, I just felt some backstory would have put my answer into context. Story 7. My wife told me to sleep in the spare room when I had early shifts, so I am not waking her and the kids who sleep in the room with my 5 a.m. alarms. That was fair. Then it turned into sleep in there because her back hurts. Then that turned into sleep in there because she had back surgery, and both because the kids were sleeping in the bed and there wasn't enough space. They were 4 and 6 at the time. Both slept in our bed 100% and 80% of the time respectively. After a year, I pushed back for the first time, and she acknowledged that she would rather have separate beds going forward forever. It's been 4 years now. She tries to push BS arguments about it being her bed, her choice, refusing to acknowledge that we are married and equal partners. The bed has equal ownership between us. Basically, it isn't something I'm willing to ruin our marriage over, and she is. So I sleep alone in the other room. My sleep quality was ridiculously better when I wasn't sleeping alone. I have a harder time getting to sleep, waking up, and I have nightmares 3 to 5 times a week. She says she sleeps better because she doesn't worry I will roll over and crush someone. I'm 6'1" and I weigh 175. I'm not enormous, and I wake up in the same place and position every night. I always have. I can't prove that I don't move in my sleep, but the evidence I see doesn't support her claims. Basically, we do it because my wife decided unilaterally that this is what she wants. I didn't realize it was happening until it was too late. I am not willing to start an occupy my bed movement at the cost of our marriage. I suffer alone with my vague depression in the spare room, which is usually half full of storage. And that hits me when we start spending time cleaning it out because she feels guilty about just throwing her stuff in here with me and leaving it for several months. She'll acknowledge that it's not fair to me, but a month later I am dodging piles of boxes again. It almost feels like I am being put in storage until she wants a kid or wants to be sexual again. And then when she is pregnant, we don't have relations for a couple years again. I should probably talk to someone about this. Someone other than my wife, because I have done that and it doesn't help. This clearly bothers me, but I get no say in any of it. So I'm not one for giving out legitimate advice, but if we have any couples therapists or anybody who truly knows what they're talking about, what would you recommend in a situation like that? Story 8. Married 15 years and I only sleep in another room when it's absolutely necessary. I am an incredibly light sleeper, and my husband snores like you can't even imagine. Every night I take Tylenol PM, wear my earplugs, use a white noise machine. I have the TV and the bed vibration on, all to drown out the snoring. He feels terrible and has tried many things to minimize his snoring. He pulls off the CPAP in the middle of the night and doesn't even remember it. Same with the mouthpieces that pull the jaw forward, and no positioning of our adjustable bed reduces his snoring. We do love each other very much and spend most nights spooned up. He falls asleep quickly and I eventually fall asleep most nights. Sometimes I just can't freaking do it. I'll poke him with my toe, cough, say one of our dogs' names like I'm shushing them, anything to get him to shut the F up for 20 seconds. Those are the random nights I usually give up and go to the spare bedroom at like 2 a.m. I do that because I start to get angry and resentful, and then I hate myself at work the next day for all the thoughts I had when I couldn't sleep. My trouble falling asleep and my light sleeping is as much the blame as his uncontrollable snoring. Okay, that's kind of adorable. Story 9. My husband and I slept in separate rooms for many years. As I snored to an alarming degree, I tried for many years to get doctors to let me have a sleep apnea test, but many simply rejected the idea and said I snored because I'm fat. They discarded the fact that 2 of my immediate family members also suffered from it. When I finally did get a test, the older male doctor told me I didn't have it and that I should just lose all this fat. For 2 more years, I suffered until on an unrelated visit to the same ENT office, the female doctor who came out to call me into my consultation noticed I was falling asleep in the waiting room. She ordered a new sleep apnea test for me, and it was revealed that not only did I have it, but it was severe. I would stop breathing on average of 78 times per hour during my sleep. She also looked back at the record of the test from 2 years earlier and saw that the results then showed that I clearly had sleep apnea. And she was shocked that I wasn't told this and immediately put forward for treatment. I was very quickly put into CPAP therapy, and since then, my husband and I have been able to sleep in the same room again, albeit with me looking like Bane. Once in a while, if one of us is sick and nighttime coughing, etc. could keep the other awake, then we might sleep separately again, but for the most part, we just like to snuggle again because now I can breathe. Okay, what's going on today? Feels like Reddit's more sweet than normal. Story 10. My mom and stepdad say it's because he snores, and they both have back problems. And for some reason, sleeping in the same bed is bad for their backs. I know she wakes up crying a lot and he's been drinking too much. There are discussions about this. It's not like they're falling apart separately, but she decided to get a king bed, and I really thought that meant they'd sleep together. I have a king bed, and before my significant other got a CPAP machine, I just used orchestra earplugs for his snoring. But now my mom sleeps in the king bed, and my stepdad sleeps in the old queen, which is the exact same type and firmness in the other room. To be totally fair though, I'm not allowed to come into their house on Sunday mornings because they very regularly have what seems like totally delightful intimacy during that time. Without ever skipping? I really don't know why sleeping becomes the thing so many couples do separately. My significant other's sleep apnea and snoring was the worst I'd ever heard. Part of each episode of failure to breathe every 45 seconds or so was literally effing screaming and slapping to his own chest. And first I had this instinct to hold it against him, and I would have to sleep in the living room when he started staying the night. But being in the same bed with him now is so important to me. And between realizing how much I needed him next to me and him getting the CPAP machine, I just problem solved it. And because it was too valuable of a connection to sleep on. Story 11. My fiance and I already talked about this being our intention in our future home. We'll each have a room that we organize and decorate in a way that feels creative and good for us, and have our own altars and personal bookshelves and closet spaces as well as beds. We love to collect art together and both appreciate design, so our common spaces will be co-created, but the bedrooms will feel uniquely ours. So we feel like we're maintaining our space. When we have guests, we'll have a system for making one of the rooms available for them. We love sleeping together and have a great life in bed, you know what I mean? And this is going to be a strategy to keep it that way. We want our sleeping together to be an active choice, not something we take for granted. Some nights, though, I stay up late in a creative flow, and he goes to sleep super early and wakes up before dawn for work or exercise most days. So this arrangement will work for that. Plus, we have just a ridiculous amount of books together and have mostly integrated our libraries already. 70% of our books are on mutual interests, but that 30% will be nice to have in our own spaces as reminders of what makes us different, and therefore so complementary. For him, it's a lot of sports and political analysis, goal setting, and books about healthy masculinity. For me, it's a lot of feminist spirituality, religious, old Buddhist magazines, and herbalism. We love who we are together, and separately, we want to stay connected to all of that. Story 12. Many reasons. We've been married 28 years, raised 4 children. I'm anxious and a very light sleeper. Once I'm awakened, I can't go back to sleep. My husband snores the weirdest snores, along with the usual snoring sounds he makes and whistling sounds, and exhales and puffs of air, while facing me and getting as close as he can. He does have a CPAP machine, but it's very uncomfortable, so he only wears it for a few hours. He flops around the bed like a fish out of water and has kneed me in the butt numerous times. We have a king-sized bed. We're at an age where we can get up to pee several times a night, and between the two of us, that averages out to about once an hour, someone is getting up and flushing the toilet. On top of all that, my husband gets up at 5:15 for work. I used to lay in bed and cry. Now, with me, the spare room, we both sleep like a baby, not worrying about waking the other up. Oh, and one more thing. I'm postmenopausal, and my husband likes to sleep in the heat of 1,000 suns. I like the window open in the winter. We're like heat miser and cold miser. Story 13. My wife attempts to dominate the entire bedroom. It's kind of true. Has to have the sheets a certain way, has to have pillows placed in a certain position, temperature has to be warm. She needs 3 blankets that the weight of them makes my lungs feel like they could collapse under the pressure. I kick the end of the sheets open to keep my feet cool. She wants 0 draft on her feet. She has to go to bed at a certain time, her time whenever she wants. I'm a large person, and she, for years, has felt she was hanging on the edge of a cliff at night, sliding toward me. She says I snore. These all generated constant complaining most nights and many arguments, so at about the 15-year mark, I moved a couch into the bedroom, and I slept on a couch that was undersized for me. I can sleep anywhere. At least this used to be true. Over time, my son noticed dark circles under my eyes and my listlessness. He says, "Dad, I'm quitting the company." He works for me. "If you don't take that spare bedroom and buy a bed, and I mean it, you are hurting yourself for Mom." So he went with me to get a mattress and box springs that moment. Thank God he saved my life. I hadn't noticed the gradual decline of my sleep life. I just thought I was averaging 5 hours of broken sleep a night because I'd gotten older and I just didn't need it. First night on the new mattress, I slept 7 hours. My eyes were caked shut from Ram sleeping so deeply. I had literally forgotten what good sleep felt like. I couldn't believe it. I've been married 33 years now, and I would like to sleep with her. We've tried sleeping together a few times, but end up arguing. Homie is a better husband with a solid night's sleep, and she is too. One could say, well, she's a selfish bee. Is she? She just wants to be comfortable too. You do what you have to when you love someone. Love isn't always a happy Instagram post. Come on. But I love her. Story 14. I always imagined I'd be with someone who had to do this, because whenever I tried to actually sleep with a partner in the past, it would majorly affect my ability to get a good night's rest. But lo and behold, when my fiance and I shared a bed to sleep in as opposed to other activities, I slept better than normal. Nowadays, when she's out of town for a day or two, visiting family or friends, I actually sleep worse. But anyways, my parents sleep in different rooms. My mom has a condition that causes her leg to hurt at night, so she has to move it fairly frequently. And my dad needs to get up at 4 a.m. for work and would be woken up by it. Plus, he snores like he's getting paid for the volume. You can literally hear it anywhere in the house besides the basement. Being in a different room muffles enough of the sound for my mom to get some sleep, but they've been married for gonna be 30 years in a couple months, and they're both happy as can be. So it works. Story 15. We both have our sleeping habits that the other finds hard to tolerate. I snore like a truck and make a weird noise that he says sounds like an angry duck. He hogs the covers and fights badgers in his sleep. We tried sleeping apart for a while, as we both felt the effects of poor sleep affect other parts of our lives. I became a raging female dog because I was constantly moody and his mental health started to decline. Doing it made me so sad at first, as I associated it with us drifting apart emotionally. I blame the generations before us for that. It's a very ingrained model that husband and wife sleep together, and that if you're sleeping apart, it means your marriage has broken down. And it is honestly one of the biggest lies ever told. After a few months of perfect sleep, we were both happier and more energetic people with no brewing resentment that would have come from a lack of sleep. We still do things together, spend our days off together, have some intimacy regularly, and we have cuddles on the couch. We love each other so much, but sleepy time is our own time, and we are happier for it. Story 16. Between the just different enough work schedules, I'm up and out by 7:30, wife is up and out at 9:30, the dogs, and my snoring, it almost seems like a no-brainer. The effects were greater than expected. Because she had full nights of sleep, her anxiety has dropped dramatically. I do not have alarm anxiety, and I wake up naturally and can hit snooze if I need to. The dogs are more comfortable, and so are the humans. No lack of covers, soreness from sleeping in awkward positions, and no fighting over space on the bed. Ultimately, my marriage is stronger because there is no resentment in the bedroom. I will say immediately the sex life seemed to fizzle out, but in reality, the sex life also improved because with less anxiety and resentment, the physical distance, we actually want to seek each other out and make time for intimacy rather than half-awake, begrudging relations. Story 17. My husband and I do this about 80% of the time. We do it for a couple of reasons. 1. He usually works late and gets to sleep in a bit, while I start work early and so am in bed early. 2. We're both light sleepers, and his snoring can and does wake me, while me getting up to pee in the middle of the night can and does wake him. 3. Some nights if he's working at an event or with a band and people are smoking, he comes home smelly, but he's too exhausted to shower. And I have a thing about only going to bed after being showered, and I'm also allergic to smoke, so he can sleep all smelly in the other room while I sleep in my clean heaven. 4. I need the room to be completely dark and quiet, windows closed and any bit of light covered or turned off. He likes to have a bit of light on and sleep with the windows open. 5. Sometimes I just want to stretch out, man. Claim the bed and my blanket as my own. Story 18. Honestly, we just sleep completely differently. He wants the room freezing cold with the fan blowing on him, completely dark and quiet, with a light sheet or blanket. I prefer a cool room, no fan, a heavy blanket or duvet, sometimes a sleep cast or the TV on. We also get up at different times. We fall asleep at different times. I'm a very light sleeper and he snores and uses a CPAP machine. We are just much happier as a couple if we don't sleep in the same bed. We both work the same Monday through Friday schedule, so usually for the weekend, we do both sleep in the same bed since if we sleep a bit later or don't get as great rest, we have the weekend to make up for it. Every night we still make sure one of us tucks in the other, a brief chat, a little bit of cuddling, a big hug, and a kiss goodnight. It still helps us feel connected without ruining our sleep. A lot of our friends think we are crazy, but there's never any resentment between us for one of the sleeping well and the other not. We each are well rested and have slept comfortably, and if we haven't, it's usually a factor outside of our control. Story 19. We do this and it's wonderful. With us, there are two main issues. I snore like a drunk lumberjack, and I have very early morning work hours. The snoring is annoying, I get that, but me getting up at 0600 means wife also gets woken up at 0600. And that's lame since she can very much use the extra couple hours of sleep. Plus, she would always kick me awake when I would snore, and she would have to try and race me back to sleep. Neither one of us was getting good sleep. So we have set up a guest bedroom next to our bedroom years ago. It has cable TV, and I would sometimes watch TV in there and fall asleep, watching shows my wife hates to watch. A few days of this, and not keeping wife awake with snoring and getting up early, she asked me, would you be totally upset if I said you can just sleep in there all the time? And I was like, okay, I like that mattress better anyway. And that was that. It's been blissful slumber for the both of us ever since. And it's been 8 years. So she has her foo-foo bedroom all set up how she likes it with her candles and girl stuff everywhere. She doesn't care if I leave laundry on the floor in mine. So what about sexy time? Well, to be honest, within a month of this change, since we were both getting so much more sleep and generally feeling better, we did it more than before. We just go to each other's rooms and do it whenever. Sometimes on weekends we still do fall asleep in each other's beds, but for the most part, once we are done, we go to our own rooms and sleep. Story 20. Not quite what you're asking, but I get in on a technicality. We have 2 separate mattresses and 2 separate box springs on one frame. Why, you ask? Vibration. I shake my foot, a kind of a tapping motion, and it helps me sleep somehow. I'm a big guy, so that shakes the whole bed. Naturally, the wife doesn't appreciate this, but loves sleeping in the same room as me. We brought this up to the person we bought our mattresses from, and this is their solution. Since the mattresses and box springs are separate, and noticeably less crap at absorbing vibration than our last, seriously invest in a good bed. Your spine and sleep schedule will thank you. There is less of a direct connection to each other, and we both have vastly different levels of preferred bundling up. I'm an Iceman, so we sleep slightly separated anyways. This way we both aren't annoyed by the other's night habits, and could easily transition to cuddling or whatever on one mattress. Intimacy is a bit harder thanks to the reduced width we have to work with because of the crevice between us, but having decent sleep is worth a slight increase in difficulty. Oh, also, since we work separate schedules, we don't notice each other getting up for work as often, so you don't have the situations where you are awake now and can't get back to sleep. Story 21. Not married, but I'm living with my boyfriend. We do this for a couple of reasons. One, we have drastically different work schedules, with him getting off work at 3 a.m. and me leaving for work at 6 a.m. Sleeping in different rooms keeps us from waking each other up. 2, I get hot very easily and he gets cold very easily, so the blanket situation is always uncomfortable for one of us. 3, we both value personal time, so being able to shut the door and play video games and watch Netflix in peace is a big help. When we're ready to be together again, we hang out, either in the living room or in one of our bedrooms. 4, I sleep in really weird positions, which takes up pretty much all of the bed. This makes it hard for him to sleep comfortably. 5, when we want a night to ourselves, neither of us need to take the couch. When we want to sleep in the same bed, we have the option to do so. Story 22. My mom and dad did. Dad slept on the couch in the living room and mom in the bedroom. As I got older, I learned, though, it was because dad didn't curb mom. She was drunk, that didn't help around the house, and would spend a lot of time with the neighbor at nights. She had no family here since my dad owned land and had his parents and siblings. Mom just wanted a free ride, it seemed, and he didn't want to strand her here without anyone, and essentially take me and my older brother away at the same time, so he dealt with her living with us as a roommate, essentially. He's passed away, though, now, and she has gotten a lot better, and even regrets and feels bad she did that. On another note, I'm married and have kids now. After my firstborn, I ended doing what my dad did and became a couch sleeper, but that was because I would do nights with our kids so she could come get some sleep. So I do nighttime bottle feedings, change them, pass out on the couch watching King of the Hill or Futurama with a baby on my chest. She carried them 9 months and cooks. Least I could do is the night shift, so she was refreshed, lol. 3 kids later, and I just started back on sleeping in the same bed with my wife, finally. So I guess it's just dependent on couples' outlooks and situations. Never really thought about this topic before, but good pick. Story 23. Oh boy, this ask hit me harder than I thought. It looks like I'm gonna over-disclose. I originally started because it was easier on both of us when I was sick. Wanted to stay up later and watch something. Trying to be considerate, I'd sleep in my home office on the couch. But this was infrequently, and my wife understood why and didn't mind. As our marriage changed, I moved my sleeping to the office permanently for a couple reasons. I had a crappy couch in there at first, and sleeping on that thing sucked, but it was better than the alternatives. Now, it's like my own fortress of solitude. As my wife cooled on the intimate side of our marriage, and the mom and work side of her life grew to overshadow the rest of it, I felt I was losing something in my marriage that I needed to fight to retain. I tried that, got into some fun-free arguments, and didn't change a thing. Thankfully, I realized that I was fighting to stop the extinction of a species that was already gone before I nuked the whole marriage into glass. I found that it was very hard to sleep next to her at that time, and in order to keep the peace in the house and keep focus on the kids, the jobs, the work of it all, I moved upstairs to the office. I read a lot of r/dead bedrooms, which didn't really solve anything for me. I wrote down how I felt, which can't really share with anyone. And I worked on hobbies and interests. I told nobody. I made no proclamation. Just took that part of me out of the equation. My wife cornered me several times, tried asking why, and using guilt and asking me about this change, but I did not let her crack my calm. I just said that it was what I wanted. I was more comfortable there and I wanted to sleep apart. Moving out of my bedrooms was confusing for the kids. I just told them I snore, which is true, I used to before I lost some weight, and the wife often woke me up to try and stop it. Doing this freed me to quit thinking about the questions in my head that had kept haunting me. and let me recenter on things I wanted. Somewhere along the way, we both got used to it. I imagine it is like being part of a culture that I wasn't born into, but I've never been an immigrant. I still kept on doing everything else the same, just set elsewhere. Still talked to everyone and still interfaced with the family. Heck, I even got better at being a dad. I wanted to learn how to build with wood, and now I sleep in a daybed couch thing that I crafted myself. I wanted to get in shape again. I wasn't my army fit self from the 2000s, and I got that back. Well, some of it. What I didn't get was my love life back. But all things pass, I guess. Story 24. I'm glad you asked. Happily married 15 years, and we had separate bedrooms for 5 years. The simple fact is that co-sleeping leads to vastly reduced sleep quality. A snoring partner wriggling around and going to the toilet in the night every night and night after night gets very draining very quickly. We both work full-time and have young children. We tried to share a bed on holiday recently and hated it. Bed sharing has historically been bad because one has no alternative. Upper classes had separate bedrooms because they could. It's very much a post-war boomer thing to insist that anything other than co-sleeping is weird. When we did share a bed, I got very depressed due to chronic sleep deprivation. I think especially as these days most women have to work, sleep is more important than ever. Maybe the boomers didn't have that problem. Each to their own, but please don't judge us for enjoying our uninterrupted, glorious, restful sleep. We get on so much better and are closer because there's no resentment from nighttime disturbance. The intimate side of our life is very much intact, since I know you'll want to know. Story 25. My grandparents slept in different rooms most of their lives. He was a truck driver and worked nights. He slept in the upstairs bedroom and attic during the day. Even after he retired, they kept separate bedrooms. His room was just past hers. I lived with them for about a year and noticed something very interesting. She almost always would go to bed before us. He and I would watch old John Wayne movies and such. Anyway, he always wore a ball cap, and he would walk past her bedroom and remove his cap and toss it into her room. It was a straight shot from the door. He would stand there for a few seconds. Most times the hat came back out. The times it didn't, he walked in her bedroom and closed the door. That was the nookie signal. I want to be that active at his age. Story 26. My grandparents slept in separate rooms because of their schedules, allegedly. But once upon a time, my grandma filed for divorce, and my grandpa did move out. Her youngest child was still at home and made her life a living nightmare until she dropped the divorce and my grandpa came home. My mom came to regret being such crap to her parents and never separated legally. They shared a home but not their lives, and never romantically expressed love to each other in my living memory, like kiss or hold hands or anything. Nor did they seek another romantic partner. Their marriage was the perfect definition of a sham when it came to love, which is sad because my grandma was the only girl my grandpa ever kissed. And neither of them deserved the life they had near the end. They were so determined to punish the other person, they sucked the joy out of activities they loved themselves. Story 27. I'm not married, but I see my girlfriend and I doing this later in life. We've been together 7 years now, and this is the only real problem we have. We both have polar opposite sleeping habits. She's a heavy snorer, which she adamantly denies. I'm a very light sleeper and absolutely cannot fall asleep with any sort of noise going on. She's perfectly fine sleeping in 50 degrees Fahrenheit temperature with the ceiling fan blasting at max. I have trouble falling asleep if it's under 70, and I can't stand having a fan on. It keeps me awake, it keeps me too cold. I have a heart condition and get very cold when I'm not active, and messes with my sinuses and allergies. She's the kind of person who can lay down and be asleep in 30 seconds, while it takes me hours to fall asleep. Right now I work nights, so for the most part it isn't an issue, except one of my days off is also one of her days off, so I have to sleep with earplugs in due to our definitions of quiet not being the same. Sleeping with earplugs isn't fun. We've already gone through one phase of her sleeping on the couch for around a year because of one of our cats. The only way to get him to stop meowing through the night was for her to be in the living room. If she didn't do that, I didn't get any sleep. You know, I'm recognizing a big pattern where people have very specific sleeping conditions. And I don't know if that's something that comes later in life, but I don't have any. You know, whether it's cold or it's hot, if there's some noise, no noise, too light, too dark, fan, no fan, like I could kind of just pass out whenever. I assume that'll change and I'll get more particular about it as I get older and sleep might get more difficult. But I'm curious, if you want to drop it down below, what are your sleeping preferred conditions? Story 28. I had a boyfriend once who was a dream to share a bed with. He didn't make a sound all night, and we would fall asleep under one blanket, holding hands with my cold feet tucked between his legs. Unfortunately, that relationship didn't work out, and I'm now with a hairy, sweaty, overweight guy who snores like a freight train. Just the other day, I was reflecting on all the bending over backwards couples do to remain sleeping in the same bed. The earplugs, the white noise machines, fans, special blankets, nasal surgery, etc. Just to avoid the obvious solution: separate rooms. After years of torture and dragging myself bleary-eyed and ill-tempered through my days, he moved to the couch. There was a wall and a closed door between our beds now. Even though I can still hear him sometimes, things are much better. I finally knew what it was like to feel truly rested. It really sucks that I have to be defensive about it to others and that they assume things couldn't possibly be going so well between us because of this. Story 29. I like it 26 degrees Celsius, and she likes it 19 degrees Celsius. I'm a cuddler, but every time I try to cuddle, she says I'm a kettle. Seems to be the right word in English, but it sounds weird to me, and asks me to move away because I'm too hot. On top of that, she keeps stealing the bed sheets, so I end up freezing in the middle of the night. I also snore a bit, especially if I drink alcohol and she talks during her sleep. So I was basically hanging at the edge of the bed on my side, kept having the reflex to cuddle but had to stop myself from doing so, and would repeatedly wake up in the middle of the night to steal back some bed sheets. Finally, she goes to bed at 9:10 p.m., while I go to bed closer to 1 a.m., so as much as I tried, I would often wake her up when slipping back into bed. At some point, we tried to have separate bed sheets, mine being a lot warmer since I like it hot. It was working fine, but there was still the time at which we would go to bed, and my reflexes of always trying to cuddle with her even while sleeping. Then we had a kid, and since they tend to cry a lot in the middle of the night, we altered nights with one of us sleeping in the bedroom next to the baby and the other one sleeping in the basement to get a full good night's sleep and be fully re-energized the next day to allow the one who spent the night taking care of the kid to take some time to sleep and re-energize. After our kid did her nights fully, she wanted to go back to sleeping together, but I brought up the idea of staying like this since I was getting way better sleep. She was against the idea because it wasn't something possible in her head. It would lead to us not loving each other, less intimacy, etc., etc. Well, 6 years later, we tried a couple times sleeping together, but she's the first one to say that she prefers sleeping alone now. She has a way better night that way, and I completely agree. And the relations hasn't changed a bit. At the beginning of our relationship, a lot of things were done this way or that way because, well, it's the way couples should do it, right? I convinced her that preconceptions are nice as a first thing to try since it seems to be the way it works for the majority of people. But if we're not comfortable doing this or that the usual way doesn't work, why stubbornly keep trying to do it that way? Let's just talk about what isn't working and find solutions together so that both of us are happy in a particular situation. Who cares what the others think if we do things a little differently? Happiness starts with you and with us, then whatever. Freaking amen, dude. Love that. Forget the world and all the this is how it should be. As long as you guys are happy and in love and feeling great and comfortable and good and, all the other positive things, then who cares what anyone else thinks? Story 30. We started out sleeping in the same bed and everything was fine. Fast forward 7 years, his snoring, which he keeps telling me he will see someone about, has reached, I'm not exaggerating here, astronomical levels. My Levin's partner is a consistent snorer, meaning he never stops, but rather his snoring just raises and lowers in pitch. I have general anxiety disorder plus issues getting to sleep. My sleeping pills actually do work, but not when his snoring is extremely loud, because he will suddenly snore so loudly it actually shocks me out of drifting off to sleep. Then it just agitates me until I literally want to cry because the sudden wakening brings on the start of a panic attack. So for the moment he sleeps on a mattress in the attic because it's cooler than the bedroom, and I sleep on the next floor down on a huge floor pillow with my 2 cats. The dogs sleep in the attic with him. It's unfortunate, but it's actually nice reading this because I thought we were doing something wrong, like it felt wrong as a married couple to sleep separately. But eventually, my sleep and how much I got became more important because my general anxiety is worse when I'm sleep deprived. So when I'm sleep deprived, I'm anxious and grumpy, and for what? Just to sleep next to each other? Instead, I steal moments, such as sitting on his lap or curling up on the sofa together to watch a movie. It certainly hasn't killed our intimacy, but it has made me not want to kill him. We already had our own mattresses and duvets because this is normal for us. But that wasn't saving me from his snoring, which I truly believe our neighbors must have heard too. We also now have separate bathrooms. His is just across from the attic on the top floor, mine's on the third floor, about 5 meters or so from the room I sleep in. This happened because as he's gotten older, he's just messy. Whereas I prefer my bathroom to be pristine, I have far more room for my makeup and cosmetics, plus bath items. Then there's the bonus that I have a small bath which he'd never use because it would be too small and he'd be uncomfortable in it. So we find moments to be intimate, hugging, a kiss. We haven't lost that, but unfortunately we are just completely incompatible in regards to sleeping. I do feel a lot better knowing we aren't alone in doing this. Story 31. My wife and I have separate rooms in separate houses. We met in our 50s. We're both set in our ways and accustomed to the morning rituals we've each worked out. My house is cluttered. I'm a tinkerer with a dozen active projects spread out all over. She's a neat freak. Keeps her house like she's expecting the Better Homes and Gardens photo shoot tomorrow. If I lived with her, I'd feel like I was always walking on eggshells. I'd be constantly monitoring myself and trying not to mess it up. I'd end up sitting on my hands getting nothing done. If she lived in my house, the clutter would drive her up the wall. It works because we live 3 minutes apart, and when we do get together, it's always still a special occasion, like a date. And it works because neither of us thinks of marriage as ownership. We don't expect our spouses to be puppies following us around all the time. We both trust each other to be there when either one wants to get together. Finally, it works between us. We have 3 kids by other partners. The 2 houses we live in and the third that our oldest son is renting are the right number of houses to leave each son with 1 house. Story 32. My husband is a large-framed man, not fat by any means, but he played sports ball back in high school and physically fits the type, whereas I am a very petite and frankly frail person to severe chronic illness. He will regularly, accidentally, crush me by trying to cuddle while we are both unconscious. I have literally been bedridden by this happening for multiple days. I am also a pretty bad insomniac due to my conditions, and he has to wake up a bit before he remembers his manners. Crap like scrolling social media on his phone, playing random videos, or maybe taking care of morning wood. Various things that I, as a light sleeper, cannot ignore. So when I only came to bed 3 hours ago, but he's awake now because he went to bed at a reasonable hour because he's perfectly healthy, well, it became a matter of quality sleep. If the quality of the little sleep I got, due to my insomnia, did not improve, I was simply going to get whinier and whinier until we despised each other and divorced. I already had a craft room for my supplies, so we got me a mattress and it became my room. We have found it also helps when we are fighting to have our own spaces to go cool off in comfort, to let our minds stop racing and think about why that situation actually upset us, so we can go talk through the real issue and not shout obscenities at each other needlessly because we can't get away till we cool off. He has also found that having his bed to himself helps his own health. He is able to fully stretch out, sleeps diagonal like a starfish, which really helps his back. To not sleep so curled up subconsciously and fearful of injuring me is just as good for him on a regular basis. Sometimes I will still sleep in his bed if we especially miss cuddles, but we sleep in our own beds about 66% of the time, I believe, on average, depending on how bad my pain flares are doing or his back or if I'm moody, etc., etc. Everybody should be able to have a place to go where they can just be by themselves, surrounded by things that comfort them, where they don't have to keep up the mask or be nice or constantly thinking of others, where you can focus on you and what you need. You cannot care for others if you yourself are a crumbling wreck. Story 33. One night 4 years ago, I woke up to what I thought was an earthquake. I quickly realized my husband, married 20 years at this point, was shaking and having a stroke or a seizure or something. I called 911. It was the most terrifying moment of my life, and I was relaying our address to the operator. I simultaneously kept yelling to my husband, I love you, it's okay, honey, I love you, because I believed these were our last moments together. And I wanted to make sure I said all the things. He just looked straight through me with a frightened eye. Finally, the ambulance showed up, stabilized him. In the short story, he had a massive seizure, sustained mild brain damage, was eventually diagnosed with autosomal dominant frontal lobe epilepsy, will be on anti-seizure meds for life, and still deals with the effects of brain damage today. He has no memory of that day or his subsequent hospital stay, but I couldn't get it out of my mind. I had PTSD for months and wasn't getting any sleep because any little movement woke me up and sent me into a panic attack. He went back to having a normal life, and I was the one that was having so much anxiety and stress. After some reassurance from his doctor and our pharmacist about his anti-seizure meds, I began sleeping in another room for my own sanity, and did so until the PTSD became manageable. Happy to say his health has been stable. We're back in the same bed again and we'll be celebrating our 25th year anniversary next spring. Story 34. I do it because the wife farts like a Clydesdale. The toxic fumes emanating from her during the night make my nostrils burn and leave my eyes red. By the morning, I have no idea how she gets to my eyes as they are closed during the night. I can only assume it's due to some substance that infiltrates through the air and into my bloodstream, thus affecting my eyes. I've tried everything from air filters to shaman healers to no avail. I once tried installing 4 ceiling fans in a bedroom of only 300 square feet, but even that didn't work, as the stench of her backside just whipped around the room like a tornado on drugs. Although I did dry my hair after showering a lot faster. That's the main reason. The secondary reason is that her body temperature raises so high, the frost on the window at night makes boiling noises as it evaporates. Laying next to her feels like sleeping in a charcoal grill, sitting in the furthest reaches of hell. One time it was so bad I would have to bet money that my pajamas were going to spontaneously combust. That night was so bad I wore 2 sweatbands and 4 wristbands to bed and looked like I was ready to go do a full set with John McEnroe. For these reasons, we are sleeping in separate bedrooms, and always will be. However, the dog sleeps with her. That is until I hear a yipe and the dog comes running out of the bedroom and into mine, jumping quickly into the bed. I think the dog knows that I know exactly what just happened in there, since she is rubbing her snout on the blanket and snorting to clear her nose before she falls asleep next to me in peace. Dear God, what is she eating? Story 35. I'm a very light sleeper. I wake up when my next door neighbors, on either side, get up in the night and walk around in their house. Yes, actual house, not apartment. We're well separated, and with garden and solid fences in between. A floorboard squeak in the next house is often enough. If I am asleep, I hear it as someone in our house and wake up like a shot. Sometimes I wake up with my kids as they turn on a light in either of their rooms. My wife snores and tosses and turns a lot. She likes different temperatures to me, and I wake up in hours before she does. If I am to get more than an hour of sleep when I can sleep and not wake her up when I can't, I have to be somewhere else. On a good night, I get 5 to 6 hours. I can just about manage with that, but much less and I am useless. So I need to have it as quiet as I can manage. Story 36. I have 2 dogs and 3 cats. The cats wake up at about 8 p.m. After a long day of F-all, they eat and proceed to pester me to let them out. It's Alberta, so it's -8 to -40. As to avoid a funeral for my cat and the eventual breakdown of my wife, I keep them inside. I let my wife handle them while I sleep, 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. My one dog is an angry little Chihuahua who snaps at the slightest noise. My other is a Chihuahua Terrier and could not give an F about a meteor crashing next to him as long as he's still able to sleep and chew his feet. Well, with angry dog barking and happy dog chewing his feet, I can't sleep a wink. I get up at 5 a.m. and my wife gets up at about 9, so I sleep on a large pillow, 8 foot by 4 foot, and she sleeps in a fancy bed. We do sleep together on occasion, not just for intimacy. We bang on the regular, don't worry, but usually for a nap. She does lay down next to me every night, and I snuggle her, but she says I am 1,000 degrees, so she goes and sleeps with 2 dogs and 3 cats who are apparently cold-blooded? Anyways, it just works for us, though. I can understand people finding it strange. I could not be happier, though, in my marriage. Story 37. Not married, but I've been dating my girlfriend for a year. I'm crazy about her, but I don't like sharing a bed with her. There's a bunch of reasons why. First of all, she snores. It's not particularly loud, but I have a lot of trouble falling asleep, so any noise is bad noise. I generally stay up for a few hours after she goes to bed. We're both extremely tall. I'm 6'5" and she's 6 foot, so it tends to get pretty cramped when we share a bed. I move around a lot in my sleep, and I will often find myself having turned 180 degrees from the position I fell asleep in. I'm a blanket hog. She practically radiates heat. I also had a terrible roommate in college, so I really value having my own personal space. We do share beds on occasion, like when we are traveling. There are certain obvious things we do in the same bed, but honestly, I don't get the point of sharing a bed. I am pretty happy with the arrangement, and I think she is too. Story 38. Husband stays up way later than I do, would wake me up whenever he came to bed past 2 a.m., and if he did go to sleep around the time I would, he would be on his phone for like an hour or more, and I couldn't fall asleep next to it, even with the sleeping mask because I knew he was awake next to me. I guess it is a psychological hang-up, but I couldn't get over it. I begged for compromise for 20 minutes on the phone. Then lights out, but he complained that I was trying to control him and he would often feel sleepy, to which I would say, then leave and come back when you are sleepy. To which I would say, then leave and come back when you really are sleepy, to which he wouldn't want to. Now we have a 3-month-old and there is no point in us both losing sleep. Though the few times he has been in the room with us, he apparently slept through the baby cries, and I would just feel resentful looking at him sleeping peacefully while I was all exhausted. At least now I don't have to look at him in the middle of the night, having a way easier time than me, and by the time I'm awake, I'm no longer bitter about it. I did some research. Apparently women's and men's brains are wired differently. Women wake the easiest from a baby cry, and men wake easier from a car alarm or other sounds than a baby crying. More like external sounds that would threaten the family unit. Anywho, a relationship is actually better with us using separate beds. We both suffer more than we have to share, but we totally still love each other. I forgot to mention he snores a lot, which keeps me up, and I move around a lot when I am asleep, which disrupts him. There are a multitude of reasons why we benefit from separate rooms. Story 39. At the start of our relationship, he worked nights, and I worked days. So we only spent the weekend sleeping together. We did this up until we got married. Within a month of us getting married, I got pregnant, we moved, and he switched career paths. I slept like a log my entire pregnancy. I didn't even wake to pee, like all the pregnancy stereotypes would have you believe. As soon as the baby was born, my sleep returned to normal. Albeit more interrupted since I am breastfeeding, but I realized that we aren't sleep compatible. He's too hot, his pillow is too big, and it makes me feel claustrophobic. He breathes too loudly, turns over at the wrong times. I'd go to bed at 8:30, sleep until he came to bed at 11, be awake by 11:30, and toss and turn until 5 a.m. when I would finally pass out from exhaustion. I did this for months, before we decided we should sleep separately. He was sad about the separation and has asked to sleep with me, but it just doesn't work. And now he realizes that he sleeps better away from me too, because I'm not stop snoring, stop turning over, turn over, you're breathing on me all the time. And his favorite, I'm still awake. Story 40. I've long since divorced from my ex now, but for the better part of 2 decades, we slept in separate rooms because she was abusive, the main reason, but also because she had a tendency to pass out on the couch and become completely immobile and wouldn't wake up to go to the bedroom unless I used extreme measures, whispering, talking, shaking, touching, shouting, screaming. None of those worked in escalating intensity. The extreme measure would be splashing her with water, which was incredibly rude and would only cause a fight. So I didn't do it except in an emergency once or twice. I remember many a night where I tried and tried and tried like heck to get her to come to bed. I was nearly falling over with exhaustion, desperate to go to sleep, and I'd spend an hour or more trying to rouse her to move her to bed without success. Finally, I'd go to bed alone, and she'd be mad about it in the morning, as if I hadn't tried at all, as if she didn't turn into the equivalent of an effing immobile marble statue when she zonked out. After lots of trouble over this issue, I finally stopped trying. I took the bedroom. She camped out in the living room, and that was that. She would stay up all hours of the night watching TV and just pass out right there. After her other forms of abuse became worse and worse, hitting and throwing things at me, belittling and insulting and chasing away all my friends and family, etc., I eventually stopped even wanting to have relations with her. And so the last quarter of our marriage was entirely without any intimacy. Another reason why I had my own room was she had the rest of the apartment. And it was because she was a hoarder, a very serious one. Having my own room was my only way of controlling my environment, not living in a pile of her assorted garbage. I was disgusted and embarrassed by the rest of the place. And of course, being in my room with the door closed meant I didn't have to deal with her as much. It shielded me a little from her abuse. Story 41. Not married, but together for 4 years and lived together for a little over a year. We basically have every reason to sleep in different rooms. He snores loudly, like I can hear it from across the apartment sometimes. I go to bed early and wake up early. He does both late. I need a lot of white noise to sleep and set a bunch of alarms to wake up in the morning. I turn into a furnace at night and he prefers to be cold. I get panicky when I can't move freely and I'm too weak to move him without waking him up. It's also nice having our own space to chill. Just because you are with someone doesn't mean you need to be with them 24/7. Story 42. Multiple reasons. My den is also a guest room/bed. It's where my desktop computer is. I often stay up late at night on the computer and then when I get extremely sleepy, just fall on the bed and crash. It's so convenient. I think that's how it started. Next, her body is always cold. Nothing like cuddling up to a cold butt that causes you deep shivers. Next, she works at the airport super early. She goes to bed early and hates being disturbed and woken up too early. I stay up late, a true night owl. Rather than accidentally waking her and sleeping in the other room just makes both of us happy. Next, she says I fart a lot while sleeping. She snores, and if I'm semi-awake, it'll keep me up. This way we don't have to deal with each other's disruptions. Next, she likes to keep the bedroom cold, maybe open a window and then cover herself with multiple blankets and a comforter. I'd rather sleep in a warmer room with fewer covers. A sheet blanket is enough for me. She claims I roll over and take the blankets with me a lot. And she also says I am constantly moving around and kicking her in my sleep. Separate beds, separate rooms, problem solved. Once in a while we sleep in the same bed, but Story 43. My grandparents on my mother's side and my parents both have separate rooms to this day. Growing up, my parents haven't always been the happiest of couples, so I often viewed this as a sign that something was wrong with a relationship. Now that I'm married, though, I think all the women in my family just grew up to be light sleepers. I've been with my husband for almost a decade now, and he snores pretty loud most nights, gets up to go to the bathroom. Sometimes he doesn't go to sleep right away and just plays games on his phone, which we know doesn't really help when you are trying to sleep. This is all made extra frustrating because he can fall asleep instantly. I'm talking he has had nights where he goes to give me a hug and kiss and doesn't even finish settling back into his side of the bed. He'll just plop down behind my head, decide he's comfortable, and then sleep. For the time being, we share a bed, but he knows when I'm not getting enough rest and has been offering to spend nights on the couch so I can sleep. I'm still going to try and figure something else out before resorting to separate rooms, although after reading these responses, I think that might be more out of stubbornness than anything else. Story 44. Currently, it's because we have a 5-month-old and a 4-year-old. The 5-month-old sleeps in my room because she's too young to share a room with her older brother. So my husband sleeps in my son's room, mainly so that he doesn't have to wake up at 7 a.m. when the baby does. We have a system. Husband sleeps in while I get up with the kids early in the morning. Get my son to preschool, then take care of our daughter until noon. At noon, my husband wakes up. He takes over and I take a nap until I have work that evening. When I get home from work, the kids are in bed and me and hubby hang out for a few hours so we have our time together. It works. Soon enough, he'll be back in the bedroom once the baby is old enough and sleeps through the night more. There's a lot of other factors though. My son sleeps with his light on, my husband keeps the TV on. Lately he watches Ask Reddit on YouTube, which is what I do too, so the TV isn't really a problem anymore. In the 6 years we've been together, about a year and a half has been us sharing a bed. I don't want to keep on rambling, but in our old apartment, he slept in the living room and my son and I slept in the bedroom. It's just how it's always been with us. Except when we first started, we shared a twin bed. Story 45. A couple reasons in my case. I'm a third shifter, and we lived in a multi-level with a basement for many years, and I have children. In the summer, the basement was much cooler and darker and quieter during the day, so it was easier for me to sleep during the day on the couch in the basement. I also kept all my gaming systems and PC in the basement, and I'd fall asleep better to sound, so I had more options as to what I would watch and go to sleep. I also love my children, but when I would have to get up at 9:30 at night to go to work, they would come up noisy as F every single night at 7, 8, or whatever, waking me up early and making it hard for me to go back to sleep. and I would get angry. So after doing this for years, we have a house now. I sleep in the den on the couch where my consoles are because I'm just used to it. The den also stays cooler in the summer, so that's nice as well. But I'm still on my third shift, so I'm used to sleeping alone, and that sleeping in my bed with another person just doesn't give me that nice rest I need before work, even if it is only a couple hours a night. I guess old habits die hard. Story 46. My parents do this. We didn't have enough space in the apartment when it first started, and we only had 2 bedrooms. So my older sister slept in one with the single bed, and me and my mom in the double bed, and my dad on the couch. I was maybe 3 or 4. Then when we moved, we had 3 bedrooms. But because I used to sleep with mom, me and her got the bedroom with a bigger double bed. My sister, the one with the singular bed again, and my dad a much smaller than mine double bed. A few years later, my mom and dad tried sleeping in the same bed in my father's room because I wanted to sleep alone, and probably because they haven't had any intimacy in a long time. They quickly realized it wasn't big enough for both, since both are overweight. So when my sister went to college, there's an 8-year difference between us, mom just went to sleep in her room and everyone else got their own room. Then we got a couch that can be transformed into a bed, so when my sister came home, mom slept on the couch or bed or whatever it is. And that was that. Story 47. After 2 years together, my ex and I started sleeping in separate beds. He was restless because he was unwell, so in the beginning we would go to bed together. In my head, I gave him a 5-strike rule, which most of the time turned to 10. I can get to sleep pretty easy and quite early given the right circumstances. A little noise, dark enough, nothing moving. If I'd had enough, I'd go sleep in the spare room. And this went on for a fair bit, but then he was getting chemo and was really restless and was just a bit of a pain. I hated seeing him that way, so I would sleep in the spare room. After a few months of that, it was hard to go back to sharing a bed. We did when we went on holiday, but that's it. On a morning, I would go back in with him for a little bit, but after a while, we both had our differences, and it drove us both to figuring out that we couldn't be asked or bothered with each other anymore. On the other hand, my mom and stepdad sleep in separate rooms too. He's a huge snorer, but so is she, and she had trouble sleeping sometimes, so they just sleep separate, and all is well. Story 48. Not even married, but my girlfriend and I live together. We sleep in different rooms. Originally started because she has back issues, and the other mattress was better for her. Turned out there's more reasons. 1, she likes to go sleep with a TV on. I do not. 2, she stays up until midnight or later. I do not. 3, see 2 above. She doesn't have to get up until 7 or 8 a.m., and I leave for work at 5:45 a.m., so I am up by 5 a.m. 4, she and I both enjoy watching different things. Sometimes we watch different shows, but for the most part, they're all different. 5, I tend to toss and turn at night, sleep at weird angles, etc. 6, we both like different sleeping temperatures. I guess I fail to see why people would sleep together. I just don't believe that 2 people are meant to sleep together. I mean, I'm not opposed of it, since I believe in freedom. Everyone has different sleep cycles and schedules, so it just doesn't make sense. We do have to make more of an attempt to get in quality time, so neither of us feel neglected, and good communication is always key. Story 49. We both snore. He rolls around a lot in bed, moves excessively, and leaves his blanket crumpled up in a little pile by his head every frickin' night. He can get physical when waking up, as in I've been punched a few times when I would nudge him awake. One time I was painfully jarred awake by him punching me square in the stomach because he had a nightmare. To be completely clear, he is not violent at all. We gave it a good try and attempted to coexist happily in one bed, but there is just no way it would work. I would barely sleep, and that caused emotional outbursts that made things worse. We are both much, much happier sleeping in 2 different rooms, and it doesn't affect our relationship at all. Don't let old boomers guilt you into thinking that you have to share a bed to be a happy couple. The quality of your sleep is way more important than satisfying a stupid tradition. Story 50. It's the best of both worlds. You get to live with your love, and you get to keep a large part of your autonomy. I love having my own room. I'm an only child and mostly lived alone during my adult life, so I'm used to decompressing while surrounded by my aesthetic. My partner is the same. He likes things in his bedroom to be how he likes it. In the rest of the house, our stuff could be all mixed in and there are bigger things we picked out together, like the sofa and wall colors, but having separate bedrooms across the hall from each other always preserves a part of our relationship when we were dating. It's fun to visit each other's rooms. It's like having a sleepover. I'll fall asleep in his room after a night of video games and or relations and wake up at 2 a.m., leave him a little note on the pillow, and walk the very, very short walk of no shame across the hall to my own bed. My room smells nice, and it's neat and clean, and man does it feel good to get in your own big empty bed with nice fresh sheets and not have to miss your partner because he's still under the same roof. It's also fun to get ready for dates in separate rooms. It still makes my stomach flip over when I open my door and see how dressed up he is, ready to go, and I didn't have to help him look for his underwear for 5 minutes or whatever. And I like that I can keep surprising him with some new outfit I put together, even if it's all the same stuff in my closet. I am a neat freak and am super into making my bedroom a sanctuary of calm. So I prefer clear surfaces, lots of light, calming hues, fluffy pillows, plants, etc. My partner is good about keeping things tidy, but his standard for his bedroom has always been lower than mine. Having separate rooms keeps me from judging him for it, and he will always have a place where he doesn't have to worry about accommodating anyone but himself. It kinda rules. Story 51. My husband and I have separate bedrooms. Have done for about a decade. He hasn't touched me for 15 years or so, and has made it clear he has no interest. I have extracurricular activities, which he must know, but I'm discreet about it. He doesn't seem to mind. I made it clear I wanted an intimate life, and he would choose whether it was within the marriage or outside. We stay married, so I guess we both get something out of the marriage. He's a good man, he puts up with me, but he's also a pain in the butt, as are most people when you live with them, and I've learned to put up with him. Neither of us have family, except each other. He's the last person left who knew my family, so he understands my problems, and there's a lot of importance in that. When we met, he was a superstar in his field, and things have gone wrong in his career since then. I remind him that he's still a superstar, even if he doesn't always get recognition. I try to remember to tell him about everything I appreciate about him. I know him and accept him, which I think is part of why he's satisfied to continue. I used to want to leave. Now it doesn't seem important. It's not the marriage I envisioned, but it works. Story 52. Because my partner struggles to get comfy in a bed. Because A, he was in the army and never got used to it once he left. B, he spent a long time sofa surfing and finds a sofa more comfortable. C, he is hyper conscious of either stealing the covers off me or rolling over onto me in his sleep. And D, he keeps odd hours, so he doesn't want to wake me if he comes up to bed at 4 a.m. or something stupid like that. But I miss him like crazy, and if I want to sleep near him, I just put the other sofa cushions on the floor and we sleep together that way. What amuses me is that we have a sofa bed, but he only sleeps on the actual sofa, which is 1.5 foot longer than the other one. I don't understand how he finds it comfy, but I would rather he be comfortable and both of us get a good night's sleep, rather than both suffer and be jerks to each other due to sleep deprivation. Edit. I showed him this comment and he told me I forgot to mention that my meds do funny things to me. Like I randomly sit up in the middle of the night and sleep like that, or I have vivid dreams and take actions out on him. Just the other night I shoved him because I was dreaming, and I talk, full conversations, so we do equally disturb each other. Story 53. Not married but serious long-term partnership with separate rooms. Various logistic reasons are part of it. We have 4 dogs. She's a morning person and likes to fall asleep listening to podcasts. I am a sleep cycle shifter, always trending towards late nights, and I often game on mic with friends. She can be very toss and turn, and her and 2 of our dogs are heat-seeking missiles, so I usually am slowly pushed to the edge of the bed. This is slightly better now that we have 2 heat-seeker dogs. They cancel each other out a lot of the time. Aside from the logistics, I love and want separate spaces. It's not a financial burden at our current place, and instead of having an unused guest room, I greatly like how we can have our own spaces to keep organized how we want, or messy, or whatever. And for us, it gives us more intimacy in the sense that when we do sleep together, like sleep as in sleep, it's still special. It's not just the default. It's a super great feeling when she has a rough day and wants to sleep in my bed, or if I'm feeling down and want extra snuggles. The fact that we have that level of independence lets us sleep better and exist better as partners, and gives us more appreciation for each other when we do share our spaces. Story 54. My mom and my dad slept on different floors. He always had the basement and she had the main floor, and in the current house, my mom slept on the top floor. He would be up till ungodly hours of the morning and snored super loud. She had a 4 a.m. job and couldn't afford to lose any sleep. Plus, we are pretty independent as a family. We would do all our own things for most of the day. Sometimes I'd bounce around and go help Dad with gardening, or he would show me how to take things apart and put them back together. Sometimes I'd go read books or do puzzles with Mom. We'd also go on outings all together, usually on the weekends, but most of the time we just did our own stuff. So it worked out with each of us kinda having our own areas. Then we would have a nice family dinner where we'd talk about our day. That'd be our guaranteed family time each night. They never argued and loved each other dearly. They just also respected each other's needs to have downtime to do what they wanted. Story 55. My parents used to sleep in the same bed, but decided that sleeping in separate rooms was best for them years ago. My dad snores like a truck hitting the rumble strip on the highway, and my mom hogs blankets. Also, they both had night terrors. Yeah, I used to hear high-pitched coming from upstairs and figured it was my mom due to the high pitch, but no, it was my dad. For my personal example, my ex moved in with me to get away from her alcoholic mother. We had been together 3 to 4 years and were in our early 20s. I was still living with my parents. They suggested she sleep in a separate room, and I was fine with that. However, when my parents left for a week, we tried sleeping in the same bed. We both had the idea that sleeping in the same bed was intimate, romantic, and special. No, it often just resulted in poor sleep for the both of us. We were both on our sleep meds, had trouble falling asleep, so minor things like shifting positions or pulling blankets were a problem. We gave that up in no time. What is effing great though is early morning cuddling. Due to the sleep meds, it took us a bit to wake up. Whichever of us woke up first would go into the other's room for some wake-up snuggling. It was great because she slept naked, wrapped up tons of blankets, and her morning skin was so warm, and therefore very soothing to cuddle with. If there was a device to teleport one person to another room as soon as one falls asleep and then teleports them back when they wake up, it would make a lot of money. Story 56. Not married, but we sleep in different rooms for the moment. It is necessary for the moment, but it breaks my heart a little. 1. The bed we have is a foam mattress, and it just gets too hot after a while. It wasn't always this bad, but now it radiates my body heat back to me after an hour or so. We need a new mattress, and I need to lose weight. For now, I'm on an air mattress, and it's great for me. This part I think we can fix one day. 2. The bedroom is gross. Her dogs pee on the carpet frequently and it smells like it. Or it just generally smells like dirty dog. If I'm not there, they sleep in the bed with her. And sometimes it's very gross if I even want to visit. When things are a little more cleaned up and I'm visiting, or before when I slept there, they are also very distracting at night. They lick their paws for an hour or so, and one of them frequently gets up to fluff her bed for a long period of time. There is also potential snoring and other sounds. If they are even on this bed before I get there, they have sometimes licked so much that there is now a wet spot where I sleep. It's very frustrating. She doesn't seem frustrated by any of it though. 3. She has some digestive issues, which this part is a little bit in her mind, but she has to sleep propped up a bit. And when she goes to bed, it's because she is exhausted and has probably already stayed up too late. Together, this means the bed is not a place for much cuddling or just general closeness. We used to have a cat, and although I miss him greatly, he was also often in the way. So with this, there really is no togetherness in the bed. It makes me sad. Story 57. Mixture of reasons, but mostly I'm a very light sleeper. A lot of noises or small movements will wake me up, and my partner snores loudly. Plus, I'm the kind of person who needs to roll around and move a lot before the insomnia goes away. But with someone else in the bed with me, I can't do that, especially if he needs a full night of sleep before heading into work. We've tried sleeping together back in his old apartment. It usually ended up with me holding him until he fell asleep, before needing to grab a pillow and blanket to sleep on the floor. The floor nest wasn't fun. Plus, it is nice to have a space to claim as your own. Whenever we need it, we just go hang out with each other to cuddle and talk. And sometimes we just prefer to do stuff by ourselves. When I'm just watching YouTube, I don't feel the need to make him also sit down and listen to it. and I don't particularly need to read the entire SCP Wikia over his shoulder. Plus, with me having an effed up sleep schedule, sometimes I'll be asleep during the day and up at night. No chance to sleep together, even if I could. I don't know. It works for us, mostly. Story 58. I'm a violent sleeper. Have night terrors, do weird sleepwalking crap sometimes. Mostly I just get into fistfights in my sleep. If I'm not sleepwalking or talking to the air while facing a corner at 3 a.m., I'm punching, kicking, biting, grabbing, pulling, strangling, and so on in that fashion. I've never seen it, obviously, but I've been doing it my whole life, according to the people that know me. I've only ever seen a video of myself once, and it creeped me out so much I was told to never record me doing that crap again. I was standing on the bed, trying to talk to someone that wasn't there, and the sounds I was actually making were not normal. Like I was speaking in gibberish, and there were a lot of clicking noises and guttural sounds, and now I'm freaking myself out just thinking about it. He snores super loud, so either I couldn't sleep because of his snoring, or he couldn't sleep because I was trying to murder him in my sleep. Separate bedrooms are the best. Though I can legit hear him snoring at night all the way across the house, it's just not as loud. In case anyone is wondering, we have a pretty awesome relationship. Known each other since childhood, been mostly together since high school, and been together for over 10 years now. Rarely fight, and generally prefer the company of each other over anyone else in terms of being social. During our waking hours, we are great together. Sleeping, not so much. Story 59. After England's performance today and the box performance last week, I would love to see them battle it out for the cup. England played so well, loose balls easily intercepted, the wing being insanely controlled, the three-man tackle that pushed the ball over the line seemed actually like a really good choice. Limited offloads, just sticking to phases and pushing through. Yeah, the All Blacks could have won with style if they were a bit more onto it, but England's plan didn't actually rely so much on individuals having a good game. The All Blacks and the Brave Blossoms both played with style, which is amazing to watch when they get good plays, but both were shut down by insane focus and their opposition keeping it to the basics, but executing perfectly. I wonder if the insane physical prowess strategy of the box would match up against England's tight possession game we saw today. I honestly don't know much about the strategy of rugby, but I just wanted to share my thoughts anyway. If anything I said seems stupid, just please correct me by all means. I don't think this script was meant to be in here. Story 60. It started when I worked night shift. I'd have to have the room all to myself during the day. I'd be up at night doing stuff, so she'd sleep in another room. Then when I went to days, she stays up really late, and I need my sleep. I work 12-hour shifts, 6 o'clock to 6 o'clock. So she'd wake me up at all times when she came in, or she'd wake me up through the night. This just led to us keeping our previous sleeping arrangements. She still stays up till like 12 or 1 a.m. usually. She's a true night owl. I enjoy sleeping by myself. She kind of does too because she likes the extra room. She sleeps out with the kids, so they're all happy. I recall reading once that it was typical for people who were more well off to not only sleep in separate beds, but if you were well off enough, you'd have your own room. Allegedly, sleeping in the same bed was more of what poor people did that couldn't afford 2 beds or separate rooms. I'm not sure how true that is or if it was the only thing for a period of time, but I can see why people with enough money would absolutely have their own rooms and beds. For anyone curious about these sleeping arrangements, our marriage is perfectly fine. It's not something that keeps us apart or anything. I just need my sleep for work, and she understands and respects that. And she likes to stay up too late. Story 62. My grandparents almost do this. They brought 2 queen or king-sized beds and pushed them together with separate blankets. I guess they're both blanket hogs and they don't really like being touched or cuddling while in bed because they find it harder to sleep, so they've done this as far as I can remember. On the surface it looks like a huge normal bed, since they have a decorative blanket that goes across the 2, but yeah, they'll snap at the other if they cross the bed line. My great-grandparents also did this. They had 2 twin beds separated on opposite sides of the room, and I guess my mom would hear the beds being pushed across the floor, and then them having relations. Once they were done with that, she'd hear the beds scraping across the floor to the opposite sides again. They loved each other, they just didn't like sleeping together. I'm completely opposite to my family. I can't fall asleep without cuddling with my fiance. It just feels weird. I get the best night's sleep when I'm next to him. Story 63. Not married, but lived together for 15 years. We have separate rooms, so we can have our own spaces just the way we like it, as well as living on our own schedules. We both work nights, but she likes to get up around noon and do stuff before work, while I like to stay up later and wake up right before work. She is super clean, likes everything white and bare and minimalist. Meanwhile, I don't feel at home unless things are a little cluttered and lived in. I collect things and like to display them, so having my own space allows me to do that. Other things as well, such as like to watch TV in bed and have blackout curtains. She prefers that soft yellow lighting, and I like bright white lights. I credit having a long and successful relationship to having separate rooms. We never fight, we're deeply in love, and still have relations almost every day, and regularly go out on dates every week. I think couples who force themselves into the same space all the time start fighting, not because of the big things, but the little things, like the sound they make when they eat or the way they leave clothes on the floor, etc. The little things start to wear on you and nag you until you start almost to hate or resent your partner for them. We avoid all these things completely by having our own little sanctuaries. We can go there and refresh and recharge. It might not work for everyone, but I can't imagine living any other way. Story 64. We aren't married, but we are 7 years into living together. Separate bedrooms is an amazing life hack. Details. 1. We have 3 cats. One has FIV, and we have to keep him separated from the others. We tried swapping bedrooms on a schedule to keep all the cats happy. It created behavioral problems. 2. We have different sleeping routines. Girlfriend likes to go to bed early and play Minecraft for an hour, watch cute animal videos, and then falls asleep on her freezing cold chill pad in a dark, blackout curtain room with her 2 cats. She snores, and the cats, younger, climb on her like a jungle gym all night. I go to bed late, read for an hour or 2, and then fall asleep in a not very dark room surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows and a fan blowing on me and my cat. My cat is old and sleeps through the night under my arm. FAQ. Question: have we lost a greater sense of intimacy and connection in our relationship because we don't have a couple bed routine? Answer: almost the exact opposite. Our connection and intimacy is more deliberate and intentional versus on autopilot or osmosis. We still have our moment of connection before separate bedtimes. Question: what about cuddling and sexy time? Answer: it's scheduled. It's only weird the first few times, then it starts to make sense. Weekends are sacred. Slow work nights are always available for spontaneity. Question: any other benefits to this situation? Answer: in long-term relationships where you really like the other person and you are basking in each other's light and stink all the time, there is some weird psychological drift where you can start to lump your personalities together. Some people like this phenomenon a lot. I find it smothering and soul-killing. Carving out space for yourself and your partner as 2 separate entities is a thing that makes way more sense. Not resorting to a man cave and instead asking for some room in the relationship literally made it stronger and better. Story 65. My husband and I have been together for 11 years. Married almost 7. We've been sleeping almost exclusively in separate bedrooms for at least 3 years, on and off, for about the last 6. He snores and I'm a very, very light sleeper. It started when I took up running as a hobby, and with 12-hour shifts, I had to get up at 5 a.m. to Gondor a run. So those mornings I'd sleep on the couch so I wouldn't wake him up. After we bought a 3-bedroom house a few months after we got married, we would sleep in separate beds about half the time. When I got pregnant, near the end of my pregnancy, I was having a lot of sciatic nerve pain, so I would sleep with like 5 pillows strategically placed around me, which didn't leave much room for my husband. After the baby was born, we would take turns getting up overnight and sleep in separate rooms so the other person could get a full night's sleep. Now that our child is 2 and sleeps the night away, we have the occasional sleepover, but I usually end up in another bed in the middle of the night because I'm tossing and turning and don't want to wake my husband up. We've discussed having a second child, but someone would end up sharing a bedroom, either of us or our children, so it's actually become a pretty strong argument for one and done. One of the bedrooms has a queen and a single bed, so if we have people staying over, we can still have separate beds. Our intimate life is actually better now as far as frequency goes, because with a 2-year-old, you have to plan when you're going to do it and make it a priority. My husband recently lost about 30 pounds, which has helped with the snoring issues. Last month, went on a week-long trip and stayed with friends where we both slept in the same bed. It would have been miserable for me a year ago, but with the weight loss and the fact that I had a bad cold and was taking nighttime cold meds, we both managed to get some sleep in the same bed. Story 66. We don't sleep in separate rooms any longer, but when we did, it was mostly because we just didn't have enough room in the bed. We are both slim people, but he's 6'6" and we were sleeping on a full-sized mattress without much luck. We also both snore, and both usually wake up to pee at some point before we're up for the day. So we would fall asleep together, but then he would wake up to use the bathroom and come back to find me snoring loudly, keeping him awake, so he'd grab his pillow and head to the couch. Or I'd wake up to pee and come back to him sprawled across the entire bed, sleeping peacefully. So instead of trying to wedge myself onto a corner of the bed, I would go to the couch. Eventually, I would go to the bed at the same time he did for cuddles and some sexy time, back rubs, and then get back out of bed to the couch once he was sleeping. Our couch was super comfortable, and it just worked for us for a while. And then for our anniversary last year, I was able to get us a California king-sized cool gel memory foam mattress bed as a surprise. It has been amazing. There's plenty of room. We don't feel each other moving around if one of us wakes up in the middle of the night. And we are sleeping way better. We do have our own blankets to keep me from turning into a burrito and rolling away with them. The smaller bed is a guest room now. And the only times I sleep on the couch are when I stay up too late and fall asleep watching TV or playing a video game, and let my lazy, sleepy brain convince me the couch is fine, and walking up the stairs is just too much work right then. Story 67. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. Just depends on how we both feel. I like to spread out all over the bed. My wife likes to be hot and I like to be cold. The separate beds started after we had our daughter. My wife was saying I should just sleep in another bed, so I wouldn't have to wake up numerous times during the night so I could get rest for work. I agreed. It works. We both tend to snore, so if one of us is annoying the other, we just switch beds. I will also sleep on the bed in the living room a lot, while my wife and daughter sleep in the bedroom. Makes them feel safe that I would be the first one to encounter an intruder. I don't mind it either. I would prefer it that way. I always thought married couples sleeping in different beds and rooms meant there was a sexless marriage or something. Not in the case here. We have our intimacy usually at least once a day when we have a chance. Sometimes when our daughter is taking her nap, and then again before bed if we're feeling extra frisky. Turns out you don't need a bed for it. The floor, a chair, up against the refrigerator. Humans are well designed to bang pretty much anywhere. We like to be close, and my wife loves it when we just lay together and cuddle, or even just put our legs on each other when we go to sleep. But sometimes we want to spread out or whatever, so we kind of just go by feel. Once or twice a day? How are these people getting anything done? Story 68. We've been together over 8 years and finally decided 4 months ago that our sleep quality was better than some arbitrary rule that you have to sleep with your spouse every night. My husband snores at an ungodly volume, and I've tried everything on my end to make it bearable, aka earplugs, white noise, headphones with white noise, a pillow over my head, etc. Nothing drowns it out. He's very physically fit and healthy, so we think he requires surgery on his small nasal passages to correct the issue. I can literally hear him from our bedroom in the back of the house when I'm outside, in the front of the house. However, he prefers a pitch black room. I wake up at least twice a night to pee, and I need a nightlight or I will break my neck on something. He won't even do a small nightlight because it lessens his quality of sleep. So we sleep in separate rooms in our individually preferred conditions. We both sleep better and are less irritated with each other. I do hope this is temporary because I miss the safety I felt with him next to me. But this is our best solution currently. Story 69. Getting enough good quality sleep makes a huge impact on quality of life. Everything from mood to physical health to your sex drive is affected in a positive way by getting better sleep. In the first 15 years, we got our best sleep sharing a bed. After a while, though, our individual sleep needs changed to the point they were just incompatible. My spouse likes to sleep warm, in total darkness, and in total silence. I sleep better cold with very dim light and some kind of white noise and moving air. If I get ideal sleep conditions, my spouse doesn't sleep well. If they get ideal sleep conditions, I don't sleep well. Trying to compromise was making us both cranky and stressed and affected our work, personal, and our intimate life negatively. I reconfigured a room in my basement to serve as my combo bedroom office, freed up my old office to use as a mini makerspace, and it made a drastic improvement in all those areas of our lives. And because people always ask about our intimacy, we have a lot of it now too, because we're in the mood more often. It's kind of fun to invite each other over into our respective spaces. Sometimes we fall asleep together, but more often when one or both of us are ready for sleep, one of us toddles off to our own little room. Story 70. Similar but different. My boyfriend and I started out as friends and roommates a few months ago and ended up in a relationship. We could have combined rooms since we wanted to sleep together, but all the time and having to potentially save rent and money, we both love having our own unique space for our things. My obscene amount of books and Polaroids, his amps and guitars. Since we haven't been dating long and skipped a billion steps to becoming a cohabitating couple, we don't want to wreck the newness of the relationship. 3 nights out of the week, we sleep apart and have our freedom to sprawl and snore and kick, all that good stuff. The other nights we sleep together, and I aggressively poke his face whenever I wake up to him grinding his teeth, unless we're in a fight, and I sleep in my room, which thankfully is never about the teeth grinding. And like many of the married couples have said, there is kind of an excitement of having to pursue the intimacy. We don't have it every night out of obligation or the comfort of just being in the same bed. We have to actively want to be intimate and find places to be it, which I like a lot more. Story 71. When I was like 3 or 4, my mom would sleep with me and my sister because we had king beds pushed together. So she would have one and me and my sister would have one. We were scared to sleep alone. We are 2 years apart. And our dad had a bad back and always snored, so our mom would sleep with us. She always had to wake up at 4 a.m. and would stuff the blanket with our stuffed animals so we would have something to cuddle while we slept. I have no idea how his back hurt, but now my mom sleeps in the living room and my dad sleeps in his room. They are getting divorced because their marriage is falling apart. I sleep in the living room with my mom because I don't want my dad yelling at her, so I sleep in there because I am the youngest child. I don't want to specify my age for personal reasons. I'm not like 8 or something though. He won't yell at her. She thinks that's why, but I just say I'm supposed to sleep in my sister's room because we have a bunk bed. Oh, the top bunk is filled with stuffed animals and clothes and old pillows. It's her room. She should clean it. Too long didn't read. I was a baby sleeping with my mom. Now my parents' marriage is gone. Story 72. We started sleeping separately because of young children at first. Now we love it. I know some people cuddle to sleep, etc., but that's just not us. We love our own space when sleeping. We've always had separate blankets on our bed because we both are blanket hoggers. He snores loudly, and I'm a light sleeper, but it just works better. And if you have the extra room, why not? It has had effects on our relationship. We have been together since we were 15, now both 30. My parents have slept in separate rooms for as long as I can remember. My mom is a horrid snorer, and my dad is a light sleeper. So maybe I have always thought of it as normal. My only tiny complaint is my husband has it that this makes morning intimacy more difficult. Story 73. Many reasons. 1, different sleep schedules. I go to bed at 9 p.m. He goes to sleep at 1 a.m. 2, he has PTSD, so a lot of nightmares and screams and kicks. 3, we are both light sleepers. 4, bed is too small and we can't afford a new one. 5, I'm always too cold and need a duvet or one of the 2 blankets. Currently it's 2 duvets and 2 blankets. On the contrary, he's always too hot, but still needs a blanket. Instead of fighting for it, we tried sleeping together with 2 separate duvets, but it was not conclusive. Basically, we do not sleep well at all when we are in the same bed. We need a lot of space and quiet to have a decent night. At the beginning of our relationship, we realized we felt the same about sleeping in the same bed, and are fine with the situation. We do nap together, and during the weekend, if he wakes up before me, he joins me in my bed for an intense session of cuddles. Story 74. My husband has a lot of trouble sleeping. He says he sleeps in the office in the futon because it's darker in there, and he feels more enclosed, which makes him sleep better. I hate it though. I've offered to get blackout curtains for the bedroom, even offered to move the bed into the office and put the futon and computer in the bedroom, but he brushed me off and said the bed wouldn't fit. I said I would measure it, and he said don't bother. Recently he said he read that the bedroom should be your sanctuary, and maybe if I cleaned it up, he would sleep in there again. Look, yes, it's dusty and I'm not the best housekeeper at all, but he's the one who leaves his dirty clothes on the floor instead of putting them in the hamper that's right there. So I don't know why he wants me to clean it. What makes it worse is when I was a kid, my parents slept separately, my mom on the couch, because my dad snored and my mom couldn't sleep through it. And I always swore that wouldn't be me, ever. Just one more thing to be depressed about in my marriage. Story 75. Because it's the best thing ever. We love each other to death, and this was something that started after 6 months of living together. She's an early riser. I'm more of a true night owl. I'm a super light sleeper who wakes up constantly and repositions myself throughout the night. This keeps her up. So she proposed it, and I gladly obliged. We've been at it for over 6 years. I love having my room. I've got it decked out with my music studio and a bed. I can come to bed late without disturbing, not to be disturbed by her getting up at the crack of dawn, and she can let 'em rip all night long if I gotta, without being a bother to anyone but myself. Most content I've ever been with living with a significant other. Dang, this guy sounds like he's balling out and just enjoying crop dust in his own space. Amen. Story 76. My, male 33, and my wife, female 32, have almost always slept in separate rooms. We have been married for 10 years. When I met my wife, she had a 3-month-old daughter. About 3 weeks after meeting, we started sleeping together. I am overweight and snore, and she has always had trouble sleeping, bordering on insomnia. She lived about an hour away, share housing with some friends of mine. Her daughter slept in a cot in her room, and we managed to sleep the whole night together, but we had to be quiet. It was the same when she visited me. I still lived with my parents, and we would sleep in the same bed, no problem. Things changed when we moved in together. She moved to my town and into a small 2-bedroom flat. Not long into living together, she started pushing and poking me to get me to stop snoring. I am a kind person, so after a while, she poked me and I would just sleep on the lounge. And then this became the norm. I would sleep on the lounge or on the mattress on the floor. If we visited people, she would sleep in with her daughter. And this has continued through our 13-year relationship. I really hated it at first and started to argue with her about it. I felt that a couple should be able to sleep in the same bed, but she didn't see it that way. Her mother and stepfather sleep in separate rooms, and while she admitted to me that sleeping on the floor was not great, she couldn't see how things were going to change until we got a bigger house. We did not have much money at first. The houses we lived in were small, so this meant that I would sleep on the lounge or on the floor somewhere. Things were at their worst just after we got married. 1 week after getting hitched, we moved back to my parents' farm, but into this little granny flat. We were trying to save money so we could buy a house. This was a 2-room building, so her daughter got the 1 bedroom and we slept in the lounge, kitchen, and office. We soon built on another room, but it was tough for a while and put a big strain on us. We both did things that we shouldn't have done during this time. We stayed there for 5 years until we had enough money to buy our first house and I had a bedroom to myself. Things were much better. Then we had another child, so we had to buy a bigger house, but for a while I was on the lounge again. Well, I will say that it's still hard sometimes, especially when we have people stay. It works for the most part. We have different sleeping cycles. I'm up early to go to work and she likes to stay up late. One of the good things to come out of it is when my wife is up for a little hanky-panky, all she has to say is, "Your bed or mine?" Thank you. Happy to answer any questions written from my mobile. Story 77. I have a cousin-in-law whose parents have probably never shared a bed for like 40 years they've been married. No one even acts like they have a good marriage or that they are particularly in love, but I get no hint of adultery or even hatred for each other. My mother-in-law, my cousin's mother's sister, has even said, yeah, they don't have the best marriage. And it was so weird to hear that when she said it in a conversation years ago. They have 2 grown children with families of their own, and I sometimes wonder how they managed to conceive them because they show like no romantic attention to each other whatsoever. And since they never seem to share a bedroom, let alone a bed, I wonder how those kids came into this world. LOL. Of course, a bedroom is only one option for the location in which you choose to take part in the act. But my mother-in-law's parents, the parents of my cousin-in-law's mother, didn't share a bedroom either. However, they seemed very much in love. I was there when we learned the mother had passed away in the hospital, and the father was at a family gathering on Christmas Eve, and I saw just how truly upset he was to hear she was gone. He said, "I know where she is, but I'm going to miss her." I am told they didn't share a bedroom because she snored really bad, and that one got too hot in the night while the other stayed cold all the time. I think it was also because the mom would often get up in the night to tend to the children they had, and they were so small. And she didn't want to disturb the dad because he had to get up early for work. It seemed also to be the matter of privacy for them and the others. Even though their bedrooms weren't particularly elaborate, my family was too poor to even have a home big enough for everyone to have their own bedroom. I am one of 5 siblings, by the way, and I've never had my own room in my life, let alone for my own parents to ever have the option of having separate bedrooms themselves. However, they too are very much in love and act like teenagers despite being nearly senior citizens themselves, if you catch my drift. So I don't think they would have ever considered being in different rooms. Don't most royals have separate sleeping quarters? Story 78. Been with my wife 25 years. First 6 were together and then my back failed. The only peaceful sleep I could find was a $100 recliner from Walmart. I still have to stretch constantly during the night to remain pain-free during the day. It was difficult for her to get a good night's sleep with my issues, so I enjoyed the living room and TV and recliner lifestyle. Years later, my back is in better shape, but our daughter came along. Baby's room is downstairs, so wife slept in her room or on a recliner couch to stay close. I think it's more important to take the best care of each other possible, regardless of what seems normal. We've talked about it years ago, but we both feel we give each other loads of affection regardless of what sleeping arrangements are. We're usually splitting 1 or 2 bulldogs anyway if someone needs a cuddle. Currently, I'm crashed by 8 p.m., up at midnight speeding through the day's news, which she would rather not watch at night, and sleep real good from 2 to 5 a.m. and it's time for coffee and Reddit. Wife is usually out by 11. Snores occasionally, but keeps BB Theory on endless loops at night till 6:30. It's difficult to get a good night's sleep on vacation, but lucky for us, that never happens. We've had people ask about it when we took in our friends after a hurricane smashed our town, by the way, and my best friend of 30 years thought it was different, but he knows how good we work together. Story 79. My parents do this for multiple reasons. 1. My dad is a nighttime security guard, and my mom is a kindergarten teacher. My mom is also a very light sleeper, so my dad leaving and getting into the bed before and after work would wake her up. As you can imagine, going to work tired as a kindergarten teacher can't be fun. 2. I had nighttime seizures when I was a kid, and my older sibling had night terrors, so my mom would sleep in the same room as us. This kind of defeated the original purpose of my mom taking another bedroom to get more sleep, but I guess having kids already defeats that purpose anyway. Me, my mom, my sibling all took my mom and dad's room, and my dad took my sibling's old room. My mom ended up sleeping on a mattress on the floor, while me and my sib took her in my dad's old bed. It stayed this way even after our nighttime problems stopped, because there were only 2 bedrooms in the house. I didn't get my own bedroom until I went off to college. 3. They don't really like each other, but they aren't in a place financially where a divorce would be a good idea. Story 80. I never thought that I would one day get married, only to sleep in separate rooms. It started about 6 years ago, after I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. My condition got so bad that I was getting up about 8 to 10 times a night to run to the restroom. My wife is a light sleeper, so I was keeping her awake every night. Then I developed spondylitis, which made it impossible to sleep without pain. I literally tried sleeping on every bed in the house, the couch, the floor, nothing worked. The only way I could get 30 to 40 minutes of sleep was to fill up our bathtub and float in the water. It was the worst time of my life. Once I finally got the pain under control with medication, I was still having the issue of running to the bathroom in the middle of the night. So I ended up sleeping in one of our guest rooms that is next to a hall bathroom, plus the room that was next to our 3-year-old at the time, my son's room. So it worked out for whenever he would wake up in the middle of the night. I would hear him and get up and go put him back to bed. Now, I'm much better with my UC. Basically in remission now, but we have done it for so long that it's unfortunately basically the norm. Story 81. Hubby and I sleep separate 5 out of 7 nights a week. I remain in our king bed and he goes to the couch or guest bed. Many times it's because he has had to work late and he wants the best sleep possible with the remaining hours left before working again. Other times it's because our kids have fallen asleep in our bed and there is no room left or good sleep possible. In the early years of our marriage, he came to bed late because of playing online games. It hurt my feelings and wasn't what I expected our married nights to be like. He didn't get it that his actions meant he wasn't getting it. It was and still is an addiction. I wish he never had. He's mentioned it hasn't done him any favors. We also figured out our sexy time didn't match well. I wanted late night, he wanted when he woke up in the morning. Now we do lunchtime because we are lucky to work from home. It's great because we don't have to worry about a kid walking in on us. An unexpected consequence to his nights of being late or not in our bed at all has made me prefer sleeping alone or with the kids. He snores terribly, and I get little sleep because of it. Story 82. I used to snore badly. Then it got worse. Then I got diagnosed with sleep apnea. It took over 6 months before I got a CPAP machine. In the meantime, I slept in a separate bed for around 9 months. Slept is in double quotes because if you don't know what sleep apnea is, it's when you stop breathing during the night and you wake up enough to start breathing again, but not enough where you actually wake up. You wake up in the morning exhausted and needing more sleep. A number of times I was late starting work due to oversleeping by snoozing my alarm or just sleeping through my alarm totally. I drove for a living at the time and had to stop at least 2 times a day to nap so as not to fall asleep behind the wheel. I am now in a new job where I walk to work, and also the CPAP machine changed my life. The reason we slept separately, though, is that my snoring was so bad that my wife could not sleep beside me. She could not actually sleep as my snoring was keeping her awake, even when we were in separate rooms, on separate floors, at separate ends of the house. With the doors shut, she could still hear me snoring. Once I got my CPAP machine, my snoring stopped immediately. The first morning after the first night of having the machine, I was a new man. I wasn't tired. I didn't wake up exhausted, needing more sleep. I could go to the cinema without falling asleep for the first half hour of the film. I didn't get sleepy driving or nod off while sitting on the sofa. Since then, however, we have struggled to sleep, mainly because we have gotten used to the space and sleeping in separate beds, in the same room, for one reason or another, whether it was my CPAP machine or I was making noise that annoyed her or her restless legs. We would make excuses for me to move into the spare room. If I could find a reason to move, then I would. We are slowly working our way back to sleeping in the same room, maybe a few days at a time, hopefully building up to getting back to sleeping together full-time again. But it's been 3 years now since I started sleeping in the spare room. This comment kind of ran away a bit, but well, whatever. Story 83. It really only started when the 2 young kids got insistent upon having a parent in bed with them. I never thought I'd be okay with sleeping just next to my kid all night, but it was easier than them getting up 100 times a night to beg us to stay with us or ask for water or say they're hungry or say they had a bad dream or blah, 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 blah. My husband takes care of the oldest, who's 6, who is nearly impossible to get to sleep and causes a lot of trouble at night. I get the 2-year-old to bed. He is by himself. And then the 5-year-old insists on snuggling. Second reason is that my husband likes to stay up until about 3:30 a.m. every morning watching history documentaries on YouTube. And then he wakes up around 11 with a flexible job. I have to be up with the baby and the 2 others and cannot stay up that late or get up that late. I also get stuck doing what previously mentioned cover heave 10 times a night. Doesn't really make a difference for intimacy, which is a little tough regardless since some kid is always awake or needing something. Story 84. Not married, but we've been living together for around 5 years. I'm an extremely light sleeper, and I need complete silence before I even have a chance of falling asleep, as I struggle to tune out my background noise. My boyfriend is a very loud snorer. He also falls asleep way faster than I do. Sometimes it takes me an hour to fall asleep, even if I'm really tired. He's out in 10 minutes, and I envy his sleep skills. We did start off by sleeping in the same bed, but it just didn't work. I'd constantly be poking and prodding him to stop snoring, and naturally, that was just depriving us both of sleep. So we eventually figured, you know what'll make this relationship last? Being able to get a good night's sleep every night. Sure, it's a shame that we can't cuddle each other while we sleep, but there's the other problem. My boyfriend is a human furnace. I like to stay cool during the night, and I also move around a lot. Being the little spoon just doesn't work for me, and I'd have to be the little spoon because he's around 3 times bigger than me. We're more have relations during the day types anyway, so sleeping separately doesn't have any negative impact on that aspect of our relationship. Story 85. We started with separate rooms when he was working nights and I was with the kids all day. He'd get back home at 3, wake up the whole house, then we'd doze back off, just for my alarm to go off at 6 to get the kids up and out for school. The little one had sleep issues and would keep me up half the night. and I would have actually stabbed him if he woke me up at 3 a.m. ever again. As the kids got older and moved to their own rooms, we moved back into the same room, but maintained separate beds. I don't like being touched while I sleep. It's too hot to have another person in bed with me. He snores, I like to sleep sideways, he wiggles and has restless legs. There are lots of reasons that sleeping alone is better. If we had a big enough house, I'd for sure go back to fully separate rooms. But separate beds works for now. As for the snoring, he got a CPAP about a year ago and it made a huge difference. His doctor didn't appreciate my joke that it saved his life because if it stopped breathing in the middle of the night and it didn't get him, I was going to smother him. We've been married 20 years and we're doing just fine. Story 86. Well, my daughter always sneaks in and sleeps with us. I go to sleep way later than my wife, so most nights they are both in bed by 10, and I'll go to bed around midnight or 1. They also both have a tendency to snore at times and move around a lot. I'm a person that needs it to be quiet or one steady sound or I can't fall asleep. If my daughter snores just when I'm falling asleep, it will startle me like an alarm clock. I usually have to wake up early, so do I want to wake both of them up and find space in the bed? Or should I just go to sleep in the spare room, where I know it's quiet and I don't have to wake anyone up? I know I will fall asleep fast. It's a pretty easy choice most nights, especially work nights. By the time I need to go to bed, I'm counting the amount of hours of sleep I'll get. I don't want to lose sleep time wondering if I'm going to be woke up by my wife or daughter or feel like crap that I woke them up in the middle of the night. Yes, it bothers my wife when I sleep in the other room, but like I always tell her, we've been together for 17 years at this point. You fall asleep every night with me out of bed. Do you really need me there next to you, telling you to move sister over or elbowing y'all or moving around too much? It's just sleep. It's not a big deal. Story 87. My parents do this. It started because my dad was, and still currently is, having a ton of surgery on his wrist. And for the time afterwards, he needed the extra space for the arm to rest. And for like 6 months afterwards, would have a massive cast on. My dad also had a shocking sleep schedule, going to bed at like 7 p.m., waking up at 11 p.m. for a while, then going back to sleep around 1 a.m. and getting up and down until he finally gets up at like 4. He has the television on during this, and mom is easily disturbed in her sleep. Then my mom had knee replacement surgery and needed to get up and down at her own pace. So really it was convenience for their various surgeries. However, my mom says my dad snores like a train. I can remember this from being a kid, so she gets a better night's sleep anyway. They don't seem to have any issues from this in their relationship. Actually, I think it's helped a lot. Story 88. I go to bed early. He likes to stay up gaming. I like the room cold with my legs out the side of the duvet. He likes it warm. I have insomnia, so it takes me 1 to 2 hours to fall asleep. He falls asleep immediately and snores incredibly loud. I sleep incredibly light, so any movement or noise disturbs me. When we first moved in together, we didn't even consider sharing a bed. The flat had 2 bedrooms, so we got one each. It goes past the sleeping thing for me. We each have our own spaces to decorate, our own little heavens, and I think that's great. We have a wonderful marriage and communicate really well. We're both sociable, introverts, so we need time and space to recharge. Whenever people find out we don't share a bed, they think we're crazy, but it works for us. I think it's crazy that most people get their own room and certainly their own bed growing up, and suddenly give it up when they get a partner. Story 89. We do this 90% of the time now. I'm quite sensitive, got an annoying tic disorder, waves of depression, and I am generally pretty restless with people around. Especially the touch of others can be overwhelming at times when I'm tired. I sleep a lot better when I'm alone and feel more one with myself. I wasn't always like this, but after 10 plus years of trial and error, I noticed it really benefits my mental stability. She has mixed feelings about it as she enjoys touch way more than me, but she understands my needs and is happy that it keeps me more stable during the daytime. She also admits her sleep quality is better as I tend to snore sometimes. I try my best to sleep with her from time to time. Before our child, it was more like 50-50, but it's more efficient that one of us gets a good night's sleep when we switch night duties now. We might go back to that previous balance when the baby is older. Our relationship is really loving though. We enjoy the time spent together enormously. I try to give her the touch she craves during daytime, and that seems to work for us. I want to view us as 2 individuals who enjoy spending their life together, but that does not mean we have to be glued to each other every night if that makes things difficult. Story 90. Early in our marriage, I worked a graveyard shift and my wife didn't. So that was one thing. I work during the day now, but it was the night work that started it. I move around and talk a lot in my sleep too. and I'm much larger than she is. The worst thing that ever came of it was giving her a solid, open-handed punch in the face while I was having a nightmare. Fortunately, it was just a glancing arm punch and it didn't really hurt her, outside of the rude awakening. On the other side, she snores like crazy and likes to fall asleep with the lights on, usually for reading. Both the snoring and the light prevent me from falling asleep. She also likes the room nuclear hot, and I like it Arctic cold. And finally, she likes to have the cat sleep with her. And the cat loves her and is jealous of my existence and will step on my face and do other sadistic cat stuff while I'm sleeping, just to make a point. I've never listed it all out before, but it's starting to look to me like the only reason we're still happily married is that we sleep in different rooms. Story 91. I'm always embarrassed about this. No one knows we sleep separate every night. Sometimes we slip up and say, my room, his room, or don't show people his room in our house because it looks like an 18-year-old's dorm room. Anyways, we're younger, like 32, and have been sleeping in separate bedrooms since we were 22, which is kind of unheard of nowadays because younger couples are so insecure. Anyways, it's really hard for him to get to sleep, and he's irritated by a lot of sounds. I snore, and I've gotten a lot worse since gaining weight. It started with him sleeping in the closet with a fan on, or sleeping in the bathroom with the vent on, having to wake him up so I could pee in the middle of the night. This was all when we were in a one-bedroom apartment. Living in apartments with him was heck. We could not run water, not do dishes, or do a hot wash on the washing machine without the pipes popping, and it would drive him crazy. Anyways, since then I'm fine with it. The dogs sleep with me, so I have plenty of room on a king-size bed alone. I get up in the middle of the night a lot, and I can do whatever I want without worrying about him. But I'm still very self-conscious about letting people know because it can be criticized badly. Assume one of us is cheating or we really don't love each other. Sometimes the roommate vibe comes in, but that's also from living together for 10 plus years. We love separate bathrooms too, and that is effing amazing, people. Story 92. For a while, it was because my spouse had sleep apnea and would snore like a chainsaw in between bouts of not breathing. No amount of earplugs, white noise, headphones, etc. even began to mask it. The actual bed would vibrate. I could hear them if I slept in the basement bedroom, which was right below our actual bedroom. It was so loud, it rattled the gosh dang metal ductwork. So for a few months, I slept in the far, far corner of the living room, which was as far from the bedroom as I could get without being outside, in a recliner, with the sort of ear protection people who work on runaways have to wear around planes with the engines running because normal foam earplugs? Nah. Could still hear the snoring even out there. How they could sleep through their own noise is still beyond me. I've heard lawnmowers and industrial leaf blowers that make less noise. Until they were able to get a sleep study scheduled, then get a diagnosis, and eventually a CPAP, sleeping in the same room just wasn't an option because it was so loud. No more snoring with the CPAP, but if something breaks on it, most common is a hose connection wears out, one of us sleeps elsewhere in the house until it's repaired. If one of us has a cold or the flu or something else that we might suspect is contagious, we sleep in separate bedrooms to minimize the chance of the other person catching it, which works pretty well along with lots of hand washing, wiping down doorknobs, faucet handles, etc., and no sharing utensils and no kissing until at least 5 days of no symptoms. The basement has a finished bedroom and a partial bathroom, so it's not a big deal. Story 93. My parents sleep separately, though used to sleep together. Reason? My dad has a bad back. If he treats it right, it won't act up. If he treats it wrong, he effectively gets paralyzed for days, possibly even weeks, from the combination of pain, pinched nerves, and more pain, and some extra pain along that. One of those treat it wrong points is sleep on anything soft. He has a thin mattress on the used-to-be guest bedroom floor. My mom sleeps in the proper bed in the used-to-be-their room. Neither room is quite big enough to house both the bed and the mattress, though at this point they might not even try to sleep in the same room anymore, as my dad snores heavily. Neither has to be lonely, though. The cats have taken to sleeping with them, the older one taking up the part of the bed my dad used to sleep on, the younger one sleeping next to my dad's arm. Or sometimes taking up a majority of the mattress, as he can't bring himself to move the little fuzzball. At this point, the separate sleeping is also a bit of a self-sacrifice on my dad's part. The younger cat absolutely demands attention at 3 to 4 a.m., and it better have just one of us forced awake every night, he says. Story 94. Not me, but my sister and brother-in-law ended up inadvertently sleeping in separate bedrooms after they had kids. They often co-slept as a family after my oldest niece was born and would spin like a ceiling fan in her sleep as she got older. They dealt with this for a while, but then the second niece was born, effectively kicking my BIL out of the bedroom and into the older girl's room, into a bed he could actually fit in, and got some rest. The older one eventually joined him there, leaving my sister and the youngest sleep in the master. I don't think that's the setup anymore now that she's 9. I believe now he leaves once she falls asleep and goes back to the master. For me, it's often my dog that plants herself square in the center of my bed and leaves me only a margin of it. I push her over, but somehow in the middle of the night she always ends up right back in the center. Story 95. My partner and I have been sharing a bed for 12 years going strong, but only because we made some very important adjustments. Firstly, we have a king bed. I sprawl all over the place, and if we're in a bed that's too compact, I'll end up over my partner and they hate it, mostly because I'm a snuggly furnace. This is good sometimes for them, and when they're feeling chilly, they'll just cling to me. But often they get hot sometime in the middle of the night. The extra space in the bed helps for them to be able to do a full roll away from me when needed. Second, we each use our own separate blankets. Otherwise, I steal them or they steal them. One way or another, one of us will wake up feeling pretty angry. Third, I have a stand-up fan that points very directly only on my half of the bed that I keep on low at all times. Again, another perk of having a huge bed. They can't stand the fan on them, but I feel like I suffocate without it. If our bed wasn't wide enough, we'd never be able to pull that off. So we very well might have slept in different rooms otherwise. We haven't found a cure for snoring though. Like when I get sick, I snore really loudly and end up getting booted to the couch. Story 96. No part of my body can touch another living thing, husband, cat, or baby, while sleeping or I wake up. He likes to spread out. He sleeps hot, I sleep cold, so we need different quantities of blankets. Also, I sleep with the blankets covering the bed while he cocoons in them. He often stays up late watching things on the laptop. I sleep very lightly. He turns over like a whale and shakes the whole bed. We just ordered a California king bed with separate bases, and we're planning to have separate duvets like the Dutch do. I'm also going to try a sleeping mask. We've been sleeping in separate rooms for several years, and it has worked really well several times, but we're going to give it another go. Most of the older married couples in his family have also settled on sleeping in separate bedrooms for a better night's sleep. Story 97. Mom is a very light sleeper. Dad has sleep apnea. By the time he finally got diagnosed, they'd been sleeping apart for 15 years. He went back to bed only for the dog to get mortally offended that he took her side of the bed, so she kicked him out in the middle of the night. The dog, that is. She got up on the bed, nudged him with his nose until he, half asleep, staggered out of the sofa. He thought Mom kicked him out until he found the dog in his spot the next morning, and Mom vehemently denying she'd ever done it. The dog passed away 6 weeks ago, but I don't think they even realize that he can go back to bed now. The habit is so ingrained. Story 98. My wife likes to wake up early, and I like to sleep in. I have a very hard time falling asleep and a very easy time waking up. She has a very easy time falling asleep and a very hard time waking up. Her long-held strategy for doing this is setting a million alarms starting about 2 hours before she actually wants to be awake. Then she continually snoozes them every time they slightly wake her up. Gradually, she will usually achieve wakefulness. I, however, wake up at the first note of the first alarm and cannot possibly fall back asleep until they have been off for 15 to 30 minutes. Attempts to rouse her more quickly and thus not have alarms repeatedly going off for 2 hours starting at 4 a.m. have failed from reasons ranging from physical, as in I could not wake her with levels of violence I was comfortable resorting to emotional. She is a female dog all day without her gradual awakening, so we sleep in separate rooms, and I have told her I will not ever be responsible for her waking up on time ever again. Honestly, this still hasn't really solved the issue, as her alarm wakes me up at the first note everywhere in our house. I have to set multiple fans around and sleep with earbuds blaring white noise to not hear them. And sometimes they still wake me up. Story 99. This is my parents. My dad has always been a snorer, and when he was heavier, it was a lot worse. I remember it was very loud. I shared a room with my mom when I was a kid, and when she worked nights, my dad would sleep in the room in her place since I was scared to sleep alone, but he always fell asleep first. and it was hard for me to fall asleep afterwards because of how thunderous his snores were. It's not as loud or as frequent now that he's lost a lot of weight at least. It goes both ways though. My mom has this thing where sometimes phlegm builds up in her throat, and when she's sleeping, she'll wake up and start clearing her throat super loud. And my dad is a light sleeper, so he'd wake up when she did this. Because of this, they sleep in separate rooms just so they don't have to deal with each other's noise. Well, alright guys, that concludes our stories of sleeping in separate rooms. Hopefully we all learned something from this. I think the main takeaway is that you can kind of make anything work. And there's no right way to have a sleeping structure in your marriage or relationship. It's all about compromise and understanding what works best for you. But I will say I am still very much interested in what your preferred sleeping arrangements are. Whether it's together or alone, everyone's very particular, okay? Are you a hot, a cold, a blanket, a no blanket, a light, a dark, a little noise, a little no noise, a little too much, a little this, that? Let me know, drop it down below in the comments if you feel so, or if you have more stories that you would like to give your input on. And I'm going to read every single one of them, gosh dang it. But other than that, thanks for hanging out with me, and I will see you guys again in the next one.